what is the aperture in a lens? Well, the aperture is a bladed type device within the lens that changes the size of the lens opening. If you have a lens with a maximum aperture of f4 and you use f4, the aperture is actually invisible. You are not using the aperture. But if you select a smaller aperture than the maximum aperture, such as f8, the aperture thing comes into play and it reduces the size of the lens opening. Now, this reduces the amount of light that gets through to the camera sensor, or film. The number on the lens is the maximum aperture, which, unhelpfully, is the smallest number, but the largest opening. Change to the highest aperture number, and this is called the minimum aperture, which equally unhelpfully is the largest number. Simple, isn't it? It's got something to do with mass and reciprocals and fractions and stuff like that. But these are things I've got no chance of understanding, so I'm not going to try to. And I'm not going to try to explain them to you either, because they're not going to help you. But this will. The larger the aperture, the more light gets through to the sensor. The larger the aperture, the smaller the aperture value, as in f4. The smaller the aperture, the less light gets through to the camera sensor. The smaller the aperture, the larger the aperture value, such as f22. So with my Canon 17-40mm f4L lens, the maximum aperture is f4 and the minimum aperture is f22.